Hi, Nick.
Hello, Warwick. Hello, listeners.
There's some dead air.
I'm sure the team will edit it out and nobody will be any of the wiser.
Yeah, no, they'll leave it in and show us up for the amateurs that we really are.
Well, that probably wouldn't surprise anybody that listens at all, as a matter of fact.
Anyway, have you got some hilarity for us,
I do,
Nicole?
but first I wanted to know, over the break, did you spend any time out in the paddock with your cows?
I did. I had to move them around.
Oh, that was a nice one. And do you have a bull or do you only have cows?
No balls. They go through fences to get to other people's cows.
They do. And I had a really good tip for you, but I'm going to give it to you anyway, because you might need this at some point when you were in the paddock with somebody else's bull. How do you stop a bull from charging, Warwick? Do you know?
No, I do not.
You just cancel its credit card.
Oh, how did I know that was coming? G'day, I'm Woz.
And I'm Nick, sometimes Coxie, mostly Nick.
This is the Tradies in Business podcast, and we're here to share a bunch of tips, ideas, tactics that you can put in place to get change happening in your trade business right now.
If you're really lucky, we're going to entertain you with a few mum jokes and, more importantly, a bunch of fantastic guests that will educate you in all things you need to know about trade business. But we do promise to do it with a whole bunch of fun along the way.
I'm a self-confessed idiot, so strap yourself in and enjoy another episode.
I could say all sorts of things about, bull excrement and stuff, but I won't.
Please don't.
No.
Keep it clean.
Anyway, this is meant to be a new format and new season, new energy, and here we are with the same jokes and my groaning, and I really should learn. I need to go to acting classes.
You're letting down the team, Warwick.
I know.
We need to get you all enthusiastic and bubbly with fun.
Chasing a bull around a paddock. Anyway, I can't think of a segue for that. Stop a bull from charging? Or maybe there's a segue.
But there are bull bars on cars.
Oh, you're just coming in with all of them. I think our guest today is going to do a much better job of the puns, Nick. Tim Cullen from TradieSpec. Welcome to the podcast, mate.
Hi, guys. How are we?
Very good. How are you going now, Tim? Just right now.
I'm very well. I'm sitting in an air-conditioned office, and it's hot outside, and I'm enjoying the December and the Christmas spirit at the moment. To be honest with you.
Nice. So, Tim, tell our listeners a little bit about Tim the man, not Tim the boss. We'll get to that bit.
Yeah, look, I'm a pretty easygoing guy, to be honest. I like simple things, nothing too complicated. I enjoy relaxing on the weekends with the missus. I enjoy a bit of Netflix. I enjoy a bit of Stan, and I enjoy going to the gym and going for a run. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell. So. Yeah, it's all steam ahead with the business. So to be fair, me as a guy and me as a boss are not too separate, because business is very much a big part of my life at the moment. So
cool, mate. And so your business is the business of vehicles. We can see one in the background there, mate. So as Coxie said before we hit record, very much on brand. It looks like a ute. So, we're doing the whole cliche tradie thing. If anybody actually watches these on YouTube, you'll be able to see that. And if you're listening to this and you haven't checked out our YouTube channel, head on over. I think we have 3 subscribers. So far, YouTube hasn't approached us to pay us any money for advertising, but we're getting close. We're edging closer.
5 viewers, and I think that's when the revenue kicks in.
We're not quite at Mr. Beast or whatever it is levels. The Beast, Mr. Beast. I think it's Mr. Beast, isn't it? But Tim, help us get some more YouTube subscribers, mate. Tell us a bit more about TradieSpec, I guess, and how you came to be sitting here. How did you come to be running this business?
Yeah, look, it's to be honest with you, it was a little bit of a fluke. If I'm speaking truthfully, myself and my business partner and I should say, were working for a startup rental business roughly 5 years ago. We're about 5 years into trading at the moment, and my business partner is in sales and I was in finance, and we were sort of sitting there constantly watching the same ute and van drive past the on the main road out the front of the business every single day. And obviously, what we know about tradies is that the vehicle that they drive is incredibly important to them running a functional business. And what we noticed about the utes and the vans was the fact that they had toolboxes and ladder racks and tow bars and roof racks and snorkels and all that kind of additional specs on them, which I guess you could say are fit for purpose. The vehicles were fit for purpose for their trades. And we noticed that no one was really doing that. No one was really offering that type of service, that type of fleet business in the market. Certainly the business we work for wasn't offering that. And my business partner, Deeksy, who was in sales and sort of a sales specialist, I guess you could say, was noticing that as we were dropping cars to these tradies, the common response was like, this is just not going to cut the mustard for me, right? If it was in some occasions we were dropping a Corolla to the tradie, and that's clearly not fit for purpose. It's not going to do the job for them. So it was a common response, and within the space of a couple of months, we basically packed up and resigned from our jobs and kicked off this business. And so we went out and bought one car, one ute. We bought a secondhand Toyota Hilux from a dealership in Sydney, which we basically begged Macquarie Bank for a loan for, which we had no business being approved for, but we're able to get it across the line. And so next thing, within the space of sort of 6 weeks, we had no job and a ute. And we basically sat down and said, okay, we need to get this thing on hire. How do we go about that? And so we put an ad on Gumtree. Sure enough, after a couple of days, we get a call from someone who's like, I'd like to rent the ute for 7 days. We said, no problem. We'll deliver the car to you. And she said, great, I'm in Richmond, which if you're not from Sydney, Richmond compared to where we are is about a 2-hour drive northwest. And if you know anything about rental businesses, if you've got to drive that far, you're about to make no money on the we were, I guess learning at this stage anyway. We drive the car out to Richmond. We take all the paperwork. Everything was on paper when we kicked this off. Put the car on hire. We jump back in Deeksy's father-in-law's sky blue Hyundai Getz and get back to the site. And we basically sat around for 3 days because we had no other cars and nothing really else to do. And next minute, we get a call from the customer who's like, we're finished with the rental. Can you come and pick it up? This was 3 days later, not 7 days, which we were expecting. So we jump in his father-in-law's Getz. We drive out to Richmond. We go to pick the car up, and basically the ute had been smoked in, had no fuel, was filthy, had concrete set in the back of the tray, and had a massive scratch down the driver's side door. And we kind of just jumped in the ute, did the sort of the handover, jumped in the ute, drove back to the site. And I just remember sitting in the ute the whole time on the way back, just like, what have we done? We are toast. And next thing, it was a good learning curve. And, next thing it was 2 utes, and then it was 5 utes, and then it was 50 utes and 100 utes. And now we're sort of sitting at about 500 utes in the fleet. So it's been a great journey, but there's been a few hurdles, I guess, is the easiest way to put it.
I don't think business is without hurdles. Unfortunately, we've got often the best lessons are the ones we learn the hard way, because they're the ones we prevent ourselves from repeating generally. I'd love to take this back to the need to rent a ute. So I'm going to be really vulnerable and be ignorant here and say, as a business owner, I've only ever purchased vehicles. I've had them on lease, perhaps would be another way to look at it, just a structure that the accountant required for the best returns for us for our tax structure at that time. Why would somebody rent a ute, and do they generally do it for a short term or a long term?
It's a good question. Originally, the model was to do short-term rental, and the ute just came fit for purpose with toolbox, ladder racks, tow bar, all those specs. So the original idea was just short-term rental, and then what we found was we were getting requests from tradies to rent the ute for a long period of time. And the common thing we were getting is like, I just don't want to buy the ute, or I don't want to go through the banks. my business is a startup and I can't get access to finance anyway, or I don't have the capital to go out and purchase a unit outright. I can't, there was a range of reasons. And so the business kind of morphed, the model kind of morphed from a short-term rental to what we have now, which is a flexi rent, and a rent to own.
Mm-hmm.
Flexi rent being particularly good for a better price point, a more affordable price point on the rental, but you get flexibility over a long period of time. So you can kind of like have the ute on and off for months without having a locked-in contract.
Mm-hmm.
The rent to own was something that came following those requests where the customers were renting it for, say, a year, 2 years, and said, is there an option where I can own this vehicle? And at the time, we didn't have anything. And so we came up with a structure that suited what they were in need of, which was flexibility like a rental, but also if they went the full term to be able to own the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question more directly, we didn't think that there was going to be a need for tradies who wanted to rent a vehicle, but what we found was that they were actually finding it far more difficult to get access to funding than we expected to purchase a vehicle. And in fact, when we dived in deep on the research, since 1995 to now, there is about 35% less funding available to businesses than there is in the retail space. And that's for a range of different reasons, but a couple of the reasons that we believe are probably behind that is the risk and regulatory framework that the lenders and banks have shifted away from being relatively open to lending to businesses to being far more risk averse to lending to businesses, particularly in the construction space, which we know can be volatile at times. And also the property market in Sydney and across Australia, which has increased significantly. And what most loans, at least 50% of loans in Australia require, is property as collateral. Mm-hmm. And so if you're a young tradie between the ages of 25 and 35 who might have a young family and is starting up a business, it's kind of a chicken and the egg scenario. They need to get a vehicle on the road so they can get their business up and running. And if they can't get access to the finance because they don't have a property, then they can't earn money to get into the property market, and so on and so forth. And so the cycle continues. And so that's kind of, to answer your question in a long form way there. We didn't think that traders wanted to rent vehicles. And then we just had this overwhelming demand for guys who were looking for this type of option.
It's incredible to think, because I don't know that I would have thought of any of those scenarios because they haven't been my reality. And I think that's the point, right? You need somebody that's looking outside for reality of many rather than just their own personal experience to create a business like this. I wonder, so the one, as you were talking through that scenario that I have found, it was our son. He had an accident and his car it took like a whole month for them to even come back and say, it's a write-off, we're going to pay you out. And during that time, his insurance paid for a Getz or whatever the little Hyundai was. Now, he's a tradie.
Yeah. And
of course, you can't carry all your tools in a Getz. And where are you going to put the ladder? And what happens if the boss needs you to go and pick up some materials? So is there a way in which we can specify that we utilize your company in those scenarios with our insurance so that we can get something fit for purpose?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my business partner and I, our background in the rental game is in the accident replacement. So we do know how to provide those shorter term rentals. It's a smaller portion of our fleet, but most certainly we have customers who call us up who have had an accident, can't get access to a fit for purpose commercial rental through their insurer or through the market, whatever it may be. And so we provide them a fit for purpose rental whilst their vehicle's off the road. So there's a bit of a range of services that we offer. It's a smaller portion of the fleet, but yeah, definitely we offer that as well, because it's the same issue. We hear it all the time. The insurer's trying to put me in a Corolla, and I can't carry a ladder on a Corolla.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I can barely fit my esky into the boot in a Corolla.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh dear. Unless of course, you're an apprentice and you turn up with the old Magna wagon or something and try and fit all the painting gear in the back.
That's what you say. It's always a painter, isn't it? And a Magna wagon.
Painters and plasterers. I had a mate who was a plasterer, and he had so many young guys turn up with like an old beat up Camry wagon or something. And it's like, mate, how are you going to fit all of your gear in there? It's like, I'll figure it out. Out the front window, bit of gaffer tape.
There was a time where the Magna Wagon was the #1 car in Australia, I believe. I believe it was of the year.
Yeah, it's probably about 1994, but anyway. Tim, I've got a question that, look, you may or may not be able to answer in general terms, and we have a lot of people in sort of I guess you're in a quasi finance space in terms of giving advice to people around money. It always freaks people out a bit. But we get asked the question quite a bit and have done over the years from trade business owners. Let's say they've got the cash or most of the cash sitting in the business where they could go buy a vehicle. And quite often they'll say, well, I could pay for it, or I could finance it, or I guess in your case, I could rent the thing. Is there how do they make that decision? Because they're like, well, should I buy it or rent it or finance it? Which one's better? Obviously there's different tax benefits, but then there's different impacts on cash flow. What's your view on that?
Yeah, look, it's a difficult question to sometimes answer, because I guess it all comes down to the business's circumstances and the tradie circumstances. But I mean, for such a long time, interest rates have been so low that you might as well have financed the vehicle and amortized the cost over a 4 or 5 year period, right? One of the things we know about commercial vehicles in Australia is that they hold their value far better than passenger vehicles. So if you go out and buy a Hilux at, say, $40,000 or $45,000, it's only going to depreciate at 13% per year versus 17 to 20% per year for a passenger vehicle. So you can be relatively sure of the residual value of the vehicle at the end of the life, right? And that's one of the things that we model our business off, is that we know with relative confidence what the residual value of our fleet is going to be. So we always finance vehicles, and we take on that risk on behalf of the tradie to be able to provide them a rental. So it comes down to, I guess, the individual circumstances. Your larger, more established trade businesses who have access to large amounts of capital are probably going to purchase their vehicles outright, because it's the cheapest way to do it, right? So long as they can manage the fleet themselves as well, or add on a fleet service pack through an FMO, then that is typically the cheapest way to do it. But your smaller to medium-sized trade businesses may not necessarily always have access to that amount of capital, or if they do they want to allocate that to a fleet? Would they prefer to distribute that amongst new staff members, or distribute it amongst a marketing campaign, or do they want to, I guess you name it, upgrade the tools or whatever it is? And so it comes down to the individual circumstances. And purchasing a fleet outright is not the wrong way to go, but if it can be allocated to a portion of your business that's going to generate more income for a smaller to medium-sized trade business, that's probably the better allocation of that capital than to purchase those vehicles outright. Now, the next question is are those vehicles going to be utilised 100% of the time? We know that if a smaller trade business who accesses apprentices might have a higher turnover of staff in that area, then is the vehicles that you've purchased outright going to collect dust for 20% of that year? Over 5 years, that's 20% of your year over 5 years. That's a whole year worth of unutilized vehicle that, when you equate to dollar figures, is quite costly as well. So again, it comes down to sort of those individual circumstances. And what we are seeing is that tradies are looking for a little bit more flexibility in their own fleet.
Yep.
So that's probably the best way I can put it. A lot of our guys, they'll chat with their accountant and just work out where are we sitting financially? Is purchasing the vehicle the best decision at the moment? The other thing that's just a side note here, I mean, the instant asset write-off limit has just dropped from 150,000 down to 20,000. So there's not the access to that tax incentive as there used to be as well. So that's another thing that they've got to consider.
No one's able to write off a Land Cruiser Ute anymore.
Exactly. It's just problematic for us as well.
Yeah. You just got to buy Getzes and write them off instead. Not literally. Nice. No, that's a good answer because it is obviously dependent. It's a how long is a piece of string answer, but a lot of people, there's just so many different opinions around. And yeah, like you say, they talk to their accountant and they're looking at it often from a tax point of view. And then, our clients chat to us, of course. But a lot of tradies out there are just like, well, I don't know which one to do. Is interest rates is still worth it at 10, 14%, or should I be just buying it outright? And obviously it depends on the circumstances. But I think that's kind of the point is you need to think more broadly than just saving tax. It's not just about writing the asset off or claiming the interest on your tax. So thank you for almost clearing that one up, Tim.
Almost got there.
Mate, I've got another question that you obviously see a lot of trade businesses, and because of and obviously you're not going to disclose specifics, but you guys would see applications and financial performance and business management insights into a lot of trade businesses. I wonder if you could give us your kind of summary of what the best businesses are doing and perhaps what the struggle street trade businesses are doing or not doing. Give us sort of that contrast if you could.
Sure, yeah. So we've had about 2,500 trade businesses go through our business that we've supplied a vehicle to in some way, shape, or form over the last 5 years. And so we've seen a range of different trade business types, from large to small. Our largest customer is a publicly listed construction company who have a large fleet through us, and our smallest customers are your local sole traders. And there's a broad spectrum of approaches, but I guess from my perspective, the fundamentals of the business don't vary that much from good businesses and great businesses to the fundamental principles that I guess not so good businesses have, and what's the difference between those. And I think what we've seen with your better performing trade businesses is a focus and care of attention to detail on the little things. And that, I guess, has developed over time through the consistency and discipline of the approach to the business, right? Do they understand what their point of differentiation is? What are they offering the customers that no one else in the market is offering? Are they specialists in that area? Do they provide it better than anyone else who is close to what they're doing? Do they service their customers in the best way that they possibly can? Do they nurture their CRM? Do they nurture their customer base? Are they following up with those customers even when they're not doing any work for them? And how many times do they follow up with them over the course of a year? We know that it's far cheaper to do business with a existing customer than it is to try and acquire a new customer all the time. So if you're providing poor quality service and constantly having to find new customers, well, mathematics will tell you over time you're going to run out of customers eventually. So nurturing the customer base, attention to detail, the consistency and discipline of doing the little things every single day over a long period of time. There's no better measure of success than consistency and discipline. It's one of the constants that I believe exist through all successful people, whether it be in business or whether you're an athlete or whatever it is. It's that the boring and unremarkable, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. It's do they have a solid staff base that just continually repeat the process over and over again? Are they across the little things in the business, the detail? Do they understand, are they making money? Is there profitability in the business? If you were to ask them what their margin is, do they know the answer to that? And are they confident in that as well? And then I guess who's in and around it? Do they have a good support structure of that business? Do they have a mentor? Do they have someone that they can lean on for advice every so often, or weekly, or whatever it is? Do they have a good accountant? So I think that's probably the three core things is nurturing the CRM and the customers, understanding the point of differentiation and attention to detail, consistency and discipline in the business, and then understanding the financial mechanics, or paying attention to the financial mechanics regularly enough to, I think that's what we see as being the difference between really good operators, really good tradies and trade business owners, and the ones that aren't performing so well.
It's a good wrap up, mate.
I feel like Tim could nearly jump into our chair at this.
I was just going to say, good thing we're recording this. We're going to get the team to transcribe that later and start business coaching.
This is a hefty radio, let's be honest here, guys.
Tim, I think there's a lot of you don't know what you don't know. And so I wondered around because you clearly, as Warwick and you have just unpacked, you're seeing two different types of tradie business owners. Some are doing really well and some are still a bit on struggle street. What do you think the key difference is in terms of, we've spoken about discipline, et cetera, but if we don't know that that's what's required to run a good trade business, we don't know. So there's got to be another key difference there that makes that shift for somebody so that they're able to adopt those three things that you've just spoken about.
Yeah, certainly. I think a structure that has a vision and some goals. Is there a clear pathway or is there not a clear pathway? Because, yeah, as you say, it's hard to identify whether there's consistency and discipline if they don't actually know where we're trying to get to or we know where we're trying to go. And so if we were to sit down, I mean, we do it in our business, no doubt you guys do it in your business, and the good operators do it or the difference between the good operators and the poorly performing ones is there a set of goals and principles and values that guide the business towards the future? And is that clear? Is that vision clear? And is it communicated to the team that they have in their business? So you're exactly right. If you can't, it's hard to identify whether there's consistency and discipline if there's no goal, because what are we working towards every month and every quarter and every year? But what I guess a question to throw back to you guys: what do you guys see as being the key differential between the good operators and the not so good operators?
It's a great question, Tim, and I think you probably get two very different answers from Warwick and I. I think for me, it's vulnerability. It's being prepared to be vulnerable. It's not an industry that fosters vulnerability. And yet what we see pretty consistently, even thinking about our own client base, is those who are able to put their hand up and say, look, I don't know, or I need help, or this isn't working, or talk to their community. It doesn't need to be with us. It can be with the rest of their support team, like their accountant, etc. They're the ones that tend to find that information early on so that they can then adopt the discipline that's required to create that outcome. I also agree around the goal planning. I do not think we have had a single client, and I'm really flipping through the files in my head here, that has been able to really well articulate their goals in the first couple of sessions or the first couple of meetings we've had with them, because they're generally blindingly working through the mess that is often a trade business. So I think it is a combination of the two. And for me, it really takes that vulnerability to put their hand up and say, I don't know what I'm doing, or I need some help to start with. But I reckon we'll probably have a totally different answer.
Look, it's probably because it's where I started my tertiary education and career, but also because I've just seen it as such a critical aspect is financial mastery and maths. I worked with a mentor years ago, and coaching is full of cheesy cliches and analogies and all sorts of sayings and stuff. And I guess part of the disappointment for me in that is a lot of people dismiss some of those things because, like, oh yeah, I heard all that before. And the reality is they become cliche because they're actually true. And one of my mentors in the financial space many years ago, always talked about being able to play cricket. He's an American, so he didn't understand cricket at all. And he talked about the fact that there's this language that allows you to play the game. And so in cricket, we have all these field positions like silly mid-off, and, you bowl a leg break or something. And if you don't know the language, you can't play the game. It's really difficult to play the game well. And every sport has their own lingo. And he went on to say business has its own language, and the language of business is numbers. Now, there's also marketing, obviously, and there's systems and all those other aspects. But ultimately, the scoreboard for every business, it comes down to numbers. You just said before, Tim, and Nick and I think both grinned wryly at your comment about knowing your margins as what sets apart a good business from a struggling business. And so margins are part of that scoreboard of business. And I think for me, it's not the only thing. It's certainly one of the critical things that if someone struggles to understand the fundamental numbers in their business, then I just think they're going to struggle to get results, no matter how positive and and how good their marketing or anything else is. They're just going to be paying people to do work for them because they're not going to be making a profit.
Sure. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And understanding how to break down the numbers and how often to measure them, like what's the report? I mean, it's not necessary to have like crazy reporting functions in the business, but basic reporting functions that work down from your main operational drivers through to your financial drivers through to all the way down to how much cash is left over in your bank account, right? How much cash is generated in your bank account at the end of the month. And if that number is below the targeted benchmark, then okay, there's something wrong. What needs to be done? I remember not talking about cliches, Warwick. It's funny because you're so right. Cliches are cliches for a reason because they're true. And there's a book called Jim Collins' Good to Great. I don't know if you guys have read the book, but it's obviously a timeless classic. And there's so much, excuse my French, but bullshit on Instagram and online about businesses and successful people and all that kind of stuff. But the good value is in those old timeless classics that teach good business principles. And in that book, Jim Collins' Good to Great, one of the things that stood out to me is like, don't efface the brutal facts of reality. When things are not good, don't bury your head in the sand, face it head on and work out what to do off the back of it. And I do wonder whether that's one of the key principles of good and great businesses is that they face those challenges head on rather than avoiding them.
I think when you relate that back to numbers, we hear all the time, but I'm not good at numbers and I don't understand. And when you look at what they're doing in their businesses day in, day out, in every trade, they are using math all of the time
100%.
and complex math, not simple math, complex math. So they're far better than they give themselves credit for. But because they believe their own story that they're telling themselves, they get stuck in that space. And we've got people we've been working years and years and years with, and they still have such fear and they still believe their story so firmly. Making that switch for them is still really difficult for them to flick the light bulb and actually fill in something as simple as a dashboard that requires like 10 numbers that are very simple for anybody to find, to give them, we've done the hard work, or Warwick did, and put the spreadsheet together so that it spits back all of the information they need in little pretty pictures. So it's really easy to understand. And in actual fact, they could do all of that because they have the skill set already. They just don't believe it about themselves. And I think that's where, to take back to where I come from, that vulnerability to be able to put up my hand and say, I don't know, can give them the confidence to move into a position where they can obtain that mastery, because nobody woke up and had the financial mastery that we require to run a good business. At some point, we needed to either learn it or admit that we didn't understand it for somebody to teach us. Absolutely. I think it's a bit chicken and the egg, like you were talking about earlier, Tim.
It is. Yeah. Learning, I guess business is a process of continual improvement. And so learning is such an important principle. And I think, to your point there, I think that sometimes people feel that if that's not my specialty or that's not my talent, it can't be learned. And some of the principles are, I guess, viewed as like characteristics of a personality rather than a skill that can be honed or developed. Like consistency, like discipline, like these sort of like, I guess, virtues, or sometimes touted as virtues, are actually skills that can be learned and developed over time. And in fact, are only skills and the skills that are developed over time. They're not inherent to anyone in particular. The
whole concept of talent versus acquired skills is an interesting one, and I've read some great books on it over the years. And I think it just becomes a convenient story that we can tell ourselves, is that I just wasn't cut out for business. Like it's some sort of thing we're born with or not born with, and you either got it or you didn't. And if you didn't get it, well, you might as well not try. And it is such a crock.
It is.
like just about anything in life. I mean, I was probably never going to be a star player in the NBA because I'm 5'7" and a squeak. And so, I'm just not going to be able to compete against some 7-foot monster at that level.
Mm.
And that's not the level any of us need to play at in life to actually live a good life. None of us have to be, those outliers. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a great book about it called Outliers. And unfortunately, we all look at those outliers. We look at the trade business on Instagram that looks like they're absolutely crushing it, and they've only been around for 9 minutes, and they have 50,000 Instagram followers. But oftentimes we don't see behind the facade. We don't see the full story. Even a business like yours, Tim, we could sit here and look at you. It's like 500 vehicles. Like, that is a big number. There's a lot of zeros on the end of that number in terms of exposure and capital and everything else. And none of us really see the full story behind that, how you guys have come to be at that point, the hard work you've done, the stuff you've had to learn. And so unfortunately, I think people do the usual thing. They discount the hard work in favor of the easy story that, oh, well, that's just not me. Or, you got to be big, otherwise you just can't make it. Or there's this weird black hole in between, your first 500,000 and your first 2 million or whatever. Oh, they're just all crap stories that become excuses, I think. I'm on a bit of a rant here. Sorry, I've taken over the podcast.
I wasn't going to point it out, but anyway. Can we go back to goals?
Yes, please.
Goals. All right, I'll save you yet again. Tim, goals for you guys over the next 5 years. You referenced that you guys do goal planning. I think it'd be fantastic for our listeners to understand what you and your partner, your business partner, plan to do with TradieSpec.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've just opened up our Melbourne site, and so we're in the process of setting that up and getting some vehicles down there so that we can start servicing Melbourne, and then next in line hopefully is Brisbane, to be able to offer the service up in Brisbane as well. And we've got a few hundred cars on order that are due in the back half of this financial year. So the expectation is that we'll land a few hundred cars higher than where we are currently, which is exciting, but obviously a lot of work in store for us over the next 6 months. From there, the goal is to be able to offer this service to tradies nationwide. Our mission is to ensure all tradies in Australia have access to a reliable and suitable, fit-for-purpose vehicle. And our vision for the future is driving trade business to build a better future. So a little bit of a fitting conversation, I guess, that we're having at the moment. But we've always felt that tradies are very good at doing the being a plumber. They've got the tools to be a plumber, or be an electrician, or a concreter or a roofer, and sometimes don't necessarily have the tools to do the business. And so we've wanted to I guess position ourselves as well as we can to try and help trade businesses build a better future for themselves. And we wholeheartedly believe that the Australia, because it's such a huge sector of the economy, that Australia will be a better, the standards of living and the economy and the quality of life that we all enjoy will only improve if there's stronger, better, more competitive trade businesses, and the industry develops and gets better over time. I challenge anyone to tell me that they don't know a tradie, or several of them at some, in some part of their life, whether it be family members, whether it be friends. And so I think, it's easy to forget how much of an impact tradies have on our lives. But, the lights come on, and we're warm and in winter and cool in summer. And, we have water flowing through our pipes, and the infrastructure that we enjoy in Australia is all built by tradies. So, we want to be able to contribute our portion of our, as TradieSpec, we want to be able to contribute as much as we can to that, to ensure that tradies are always on the road, and they're in reliable and suitable vehicles, and that we can offer it across Australia. So that's sort of where we're trying to take it over the next few years, and so we're investing as much of our capital into it at the moment to keep driving it forward. And it's a challenging 12 months ahead. No doubt you guys are having some of those conversations with your customers that the next 12 months is going to be hard and people are going to feel the pain. And, it's about, I guess, the businesses that can get through this next 12 months, particularly who got through COVID as well, will be incredibly battle hardened when they come out the other side. So, the goal is to push through the difficult periods. It's a challenge, but businesses face challenges all the time, and it's about just pushing through and getting to the other side. So that's sort of what's in store for us over the next few years, I guess, is that timeline. And yeah, we're excited about it. We're pumped about it. We've got more staff coming on board, and they're pumped about it. And we like getting everyone involved in that vision and the mission. And I think it's an exciting time for everyone in business, particularly tradies. It's a little one.
Awesome. I was thinking about how many puns I was counting there, Tim.
Intentional. It's unintentional.
You cannot avoid them in this game, mate. Driving and building and the road to the future. It's just so good. Just dripping. Puns dripping from the ceiling. Tim, it's been a great chat today, mate. It's always nice to talk to a business who is serving the trade industries that has great insights. And I think with the number of customers, you dropped the figure of 2,500 trade businesses that you guys have worked with over the last 5 years. I think that gives you an amazing insight. So for those of you listening to this podcast, there's some fantastic, I don't know, not sort of inside running, but there's some fantastic key points out of this episode that I'd love you to even go back and have a second listen to, because as Tim's talking about with the future, the next year or two, will be some continued learnings and opportunities for growth and building strength amongst those of you who are still going. So, mate, thanks for your time today. If anyone's thinking about a vehicle, instead of buying a $150,000 clapped out Land Cruiser ute, maybe renting a Getz or something, where would they find out about you guys?
So you can go to our website, which is tradiespec.com.au, or you can shoot us a message on Instagram, which is just TradieSpec, or Facebook, which is TradieSpec also. We've got more vehicles coming in shortly, so there's plenty of Rangers and Hiluxes that will be ready to go, fit out, ready to go for whoever's looking for them. So yeah,
nice. Well, mate, thanks again for your time.
Thank you, guys. Very much appreciated.